How's it going, guys? Topic for today's video, a little bit of an introduction to rainwater harvesting. Seems like we have some storm clouds rolling by here. I don't know if we're gonna get any rain. It's definitely a good time to talk about rainwater harvesting when it looks like it might rain. These clouds here don't look too bad, but going out in the valley, looks like we got something that might be brewing out there.
Is it raining?
No. Looks like it might.
It always rains.
It always rains.
Your cat's outside?
No.
Oh, you're filming.
Yeah, I'm filming. So a few things that I want to go over in today's video is the 8 guiding principles of rainwater harvesting. Another thing is why rainwater is so important. A couple of easy things that you can do to get started, and some of the books that I'd recommend that you check out if you want to go a little bit further and really get into the rainwater harvesting. So I first got introduced to the premise of rainwater harvesting probably just over about a year ago, June or July of 2016. It was just after we purchased our land here in southeastern Arizona, and somebody recommended that I check out this guy, Brad Lancaster. Brad Lancaster is a permaculture designer and very well known for obviously his books on rainwater harvesting. He lives in Tucson, so it's only just about 40 minutes away from here. He's known all around the world for the information that he talks about. It is just really good stuff. So first off, let's go over the 8 principles of successful rainwater harvesting, and that's directly from Brad's book here. The first principle, begin with long and thoughtful observation. So this is something that all of us can do wherever we live, is that we can start to observe how the water flows and how it moves on our property. So for us, it's been really nice being out here during the monsoon storms, because I go out literally during the storms and see how the water is flowing, seeing where it's pooling up, seeing where the washes are, and just trying to get a really good idea of how the water is flowing where we live here. So if you live in an urban environment, it doesn't really matter. Go out during a rainstorm and see how the water is flowing off of your roof, and seeing if there's areas where the water is pooling up or flooding. Just go out and observe and just think about it. That's the first principle, and it seems so simple, but it's really important because you want to see what is happening so that you know what to do. Because if you just go out and start doing some earthworks and start doing swales or berms and basins and you don't know where any of the water is going, then those earthworks that you could do could be totally ineffective, and it could actually be detrimental possibly. The next principle of rainwater harvesting is that you want to start at the top of the watershed and then work your way down. So for us, the top of our watershed is just going up this, I guess between these 2 big mounds, just kind of going up our property that way. Right at the lot line there, that is technically the top of our watershed on our property. For a lot of you, if you just live in an urban environment, the top of your watershed is going to be your roof. So you want to start at the top of your watershed and then work your way down. So it kind of makes a little bit more sense where we're at, because I'm going to be applying rainwater harvesting earthworks towards the top of our property, and then work my way down towards where all the water flows down towards the bottom. You want to start at the top, you don't want to start at the bottom. The third principle is to start small and simple. So a lot of the earthworks that Brad talks about in this book here is all about doing small earthworks that are easy to maintain, they're easy to build, and if any of the earthworks happen to fail for some reason, it's not going to be a catastrophe. So that's one reason why it's important to start with just little projects here and there. So it could be digging a small basin. It could be doing a very small swale. Not a huge swale where maybe the swale mounds could be, this tall, but something a lot smaller, something that's a little bit more easier for people to do. So he says here for this principle, to work at the human scale so you can build and repair everything. Many small strategies are far more effective than one big strategy where you're trying to infiltrate water into the soil. So something that you're going to notice that I'm going to be doing, a lot of the earthworks that I'm going to be doing are going to be very small. And you might think to yourself, it's so small, what is it going to do? If you have 1,000 small earthworks, it's much more effective than having one ginormous, massive earthwork. So the fourth principle is that you want to spread and infiltrate the flow of water. So rather than having water erosively run off the land's surface, encourage it to stick around, walk around, and infiltrate into the soil. Slow it, spread it, and sink it. So those are some terms that you're going to hear me talk about a lot. The thing is, we want to spread the water over a larger surface area, let it infiltrate into the ground. It just has to be raining while I'm doing this video. The ground or the soil, that is the largest free tank that you have. Like, you see how we have these big, big poly tanks in the culvert cistern. Another place that you can store water is directly in the ground. So the fifth principle is to always plan an overflow route and manage that overflow as a resource. So Brad says here, always have an overflow route for water in times of extra heavy rains, and where possible, use that overflow as a resource. So like in my last video, I was just kind of showing you our tank setup there. And when our tanks get completely full during a heavy storm, where's that overflow going to be going? It's going to be going and watering other trees. So we're going to be using that overflow as a resource rather than it just not really being used as effectively as it could. When I'll be doing earthworks like swales, for example, we want to plan a way for when that swale fills up with water, where's that water going to go? So the sixth principle is maximize living and organic ground cover. So create a living sponge so the harvested water is used to create more resources, while the soil's ability to infiltrate and hold water steadily improves. So that's really important. So the idea with creating a vegetative cover or organic ground cover is because organic matter holds a lot more water than the sandy soil that we have. So something just as simple as covering all of our ground with either wood chips or with straw or with another material that you could use for mulch, the idea is to keep the water in the ground, but also as that mulch breaks down, it creates an organic soil which holds a lot more water than sand on its own. The next principle is maximize beneficial relationships and efficiency by stacking functions. Get your water harvesting strategies to do more than hold water. Berms can double as high and dry raised path. Plantings can be placed to cool buildings. Vegetation can be selected to provide food. So an example from our property here is that we have a mulberry tree that's planted just outside of our awning area here. So when that tree grows up to be a full size, not only is it going to be producing a lot of food, but it's also going to be providing a lot of shade for this awning area, specifically during the summer months when the sun sets pretty well due east. It actually goes a little bit north of due east, but it's going to be providing shade in this area. That mulberry tree is also harvesting all of the gray water from our washing machine. So just by being selective and thinking about it before we just start doing stuff, that tree there is providing 3 functions instead of maybe if we just planted it randomly out on our property, it might only be providing 1 function. So the 8th and final principle is continually reassess your system, quote unquote, the feedback loop. Observe how your work affects the site, beginning again with the first principle. Make any needed changes using the principles to guide you. So in order to make our rainwater harvesting systems better, is to continually reassess it and to see how we can improve them. So if something isn't necessarily working very well, is there any kind of tweaks or changes that we can make to it in order to make it work better? If you guys have noticed, Joe from Homesteadonomics, he's been working on his little rainwater garden at the bottom of his driveway for a number of years and making it better and better and better. And right now it looks pretty badass, so I would definitely go check out his videos on his rainwater harvesting garden. So we want to continually make things better by observing them and seeing how they're working and if we can make any tweaks or changes to them. So those are the 8 guiding principles of rainwater harvesting. The next thing that I want to talk about, and I think this is really important, is why is rainwater so important? Why should we be focused on rainwater harvesting? What's wrong with the water that comes from a well? Or what's wrong with the water that the city supplies us? So Brad's got a good section on this book about the value of rainwater. The first one here, precipitation, so that can include rain, hail, sleet, and snowfall, is the primary source of fresh water within our planet's hydrologic cycle. So it's definitely really important. Rainwater is really important, obviously, to the earth. The next thing here, the next bullet point, precipitation is naturally distilled through evaporation prior to cloud formation, and thus is one of the purest sources of water. Rainwater has about 100 times less total dissolved solids than ground and surface water in my hometown. He's referring to Tucson there. So rainwater is a very pure source of water, and that's one reason why it's so important to do rainwater harvesting. The next bullet point here, rain is considered soft due to the lack of calcium carbonate or magnesium in solution, and is excellent for cooking, washing, and saving energy. Much of our ground and surface water is hard due to the calcium and magnesium compounds that dissolve as water runs through or over soil. These compounds deposit on or in cookware, pipes, water heaters, forming the white scale that inhibits heat conduction and shortens pipe and appliance life. Using rainwater instead saves energy and maintenance costs and can prolong the life of water heater and pipes. Rainwater use also reduces detergent and soap requirements and eliminates soap scum, hardiness deposits, and the need for a water softener. So that's another really good reason why rainwater is so important. Rainwater is a natural fertilizer. According to Cooperative Extension Agent John Begeman, rain contains sulfur, important in the formation of plant amino acids, and it contains beneficial microorganisms and mineral nutrients collected from dust in the air, important for plant growth. Another reason why rainwater is so important is rainwater has the lowest salt content of natural fresh water sources, so it is a superior water source for plants. Soils with high salt concentrations inhibit plant growth by reducing the vegetation's ability to take up water and conduct photosynthesis. Rainwater is one of the best sources of water, if not the best, for plants. So that's why rainwater harvesting is so good. And the last point that is really cool is rainwater comes to us free of charge. So you might even be able to hear the rain falling on the roof above me. It just falls free from the sky. Some areas in the world get a lot more rain than others, but even in a climate like this, where we only get 11 or 12 inches of rain per year, there's still so much that we can do just with that amount of water compared to a place maybe like in the Pacific Northwest where they get, 35 or 40 inches of rain per year. So those are some really good reasons why rainwater harvesting is it's so important, and I think it's one reason why I'm just so interested in it, because it's the best source of water. It's going to be the best source of water for your plants. For domestic use, it's going to be the best source of water. So before we got our monsoon rains, like our water tanks were filled with well water that was delivered to us. We even notice already like that we're getting that white kind of like film that gets on some of our cooking appliances and stuff. So rainwater, one of the freshest sources of water that you can get. It falls free from the sky, and if you just use some very simple low-tech strategies, you can harvest a lot of that rainwater. You can use it for domestic use, or you can use it for irrigation, which is definitely going to be a lot better for irrigation than if you're using city water or well water. So what are some things that are easy to do to get started with rainwater harvesting? First thing that you want to do is you want to go outside and see where the water flows on your property. So how it's coming off of your house, how it's flowing on your property, how is the water moving? So that's the first thing, that's the first principle of rainwater harvesting. But from there, you can direct a downspout from a gutter to go to a fruit tree that you plant. And you can pick a really good location for that fruit tree, so maybe it has some other benefits as well. It can provide afternoon shade when it's really hot out. It could almost be used as a wind blocker as well. If you plant a fruit tree that does well in your area and it's getting that extra water from the downspout, there's a very good chance that you're not going to have to provide any external source of water for that tree. And if it's going to be getting more water coming from a downspout, that tree is going to do much better. It's going to grow a lot bigger, produce more fruit. So you're going to be getting a number of different functions from that tree. And in my opinion, that's definitely one of the easiest things that you can do to get started with rainwater harvesting, is to just plant one tree and direct water coming from downspouts into a basin that you plant that tree in. Something else that I've mentioned when I was talking about our gray water system is that it's very easy to divert the water from your washing machine to go out into a basin where you plant a fruit tree, and some of the other principles also apply there. The reason why it's so easy to start gray water harvesting by using the water that comes from your washing machine is that a washing machine it can actually pump the water up. So if your washing machine's in a basement, it can pump it out a basement window, and then you can direct it to a fruit tree or something like that. I mean, there's a lot more options that you can do with a washing machine rather than trying to reconfigure the plumbing of your house and using that gray water to go outside or something. That's going to be much more difficult. So another really good place to get started with rainwater harvesting is right here on YouTube. There's a number of really good videos. Specifically, I'd watch the one that Kirsten Dirksen did with Brad Lancaster, doing a tour of his home in Tucson. Definitely check that out to get some ideas for things that you can do. I'm sure there's lots of other videos around YouTube about rainwater harvesting that you can check out. Obviously, all my videos as well that I've done on it. Something else that I do to get started with the rainwater harvesting is invest in some good books. So Brad has 2 books out right now, Rainwater Harvesting for Drylands and Beyond. And this one is volume 1, Guiding Principles to Welcome Rain into Your Landscape. And the second volume here is Rainwater Harvesting Earthworks. You can tell by the thickness of these books, there is so much good information in here. There's so many different diagrams to give you ideas of little things that you can do. So just keep in mind, if you don't have a big piece of land, it is not a prerequisite to do rainwater harvesting. Even if you live in a small home or a big home in an urban neighborhood, there's still a lot of little things that you can do in order to get started with the rainwater harvesting, and you don't have to invest a lot of money into it. So you don't have to invest in lots of big poly tanks or a culvert cistern or anything like that. You don't have to do that to do rainwater harvesting. So what the tanks are primarily used for is to store water in times when it's not raining. So you don't have to go out and spend money on the tanks. To get started, what you could use is a shovel, a rake, and if you can get some rock, that always helps for doing some of the earthworks. But you don't have to go out and invest a lot of money in order to start rainwater harvesting. And then another book that I'd recommend, Gardening with Less Water. So when you live in an arid climate like us, a book that says Gardening with Less Water, Low-Tech, Low-Cost Techniques, use up to 90% less water in your garden. So this book here talks about how to maximize the water that you do have for garden beds, for tree plantings, all that kind of stuff. This has got a ton of really good information in it, and I'd highly, highly recommend it. So another book that complements rainwater harvesting is this one, How to Create an Oasis with Gray Water. So gray water is typically water that comes from sinks, comes from your washing machine, it comes from the shower. If you have a toilet, that is considered black water. The water from your kitchen sink for most people is going to be considered black water. The reason for that is if you're using your sink to prepare or clean meat in it, then it's considered black water. If there's any dairy in your sink, like you're washing stuff with like cheese on it or milk, that would also be considered black water. Since Hannah and myself, we're both vegan, we don't consume meat or dairy or anything like that. The water coming from our kitchen sink is considered gray water. This book here has just so much freaking information about how to use gray water and setting up gray water systems. It is absolutely fabulous. I will say this though, in order to do gray water harvesting to its full potential, it is so much easier to do it and to reroute plumbing before you build your house, or before basically the plumbing is finished in its conventional sense. You can go in and reroute plumbing after it's been done. If you have a basement and all the drain pipes are accessible, it'd be easiest at that point. So that's why I suggest just starting with your laundry machine, because it would be the easiest thing to start with. Once you start rerouting drain pipes from your shower or from like a bathroom sink or something, it can be quite expensive. It can be quite expensive, and it could even be not even possible to do. So that's one reason why it's really important. If you're going to be starting to build an off-grid home and you want to do gray water harvesting, definitely get this book and get some ideas about how you can set your system up. So that's a quick little introduction into rainwater harvesting. Hopefully you guys kind of get a better idea of maybe why I'm doing some of the things that I'm doing. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail when I'm doing specific projects, why I'm doing it, what the benefits are of it, and then it'll just kind of make a lot more sense and create a little bit more clarity. So if you want to get started with rainwater harvesting, the best thing to do is just start. Get some good books, watch a lot of videos on YouTube, and then just start observing and thinking what you can do in order to harvest the water that falls free from the sky. So for us living off grid, rainwater harvesting is such a big part of it. The rainwater will provide everything that we use domestically, so for showering, for cooking, for drinking, Plus, it's also so important to irrigate our garden beds and also all of our fruit trees and stuff. So it just plays such an important part of living off-grid for us. I also want to quickly give a few thank yous to some gifts that I got in the mail. So I got this nice water bottle, ASU water bottle from Manuel, who's a student at Arizona State University. Wrote me a nice little letter, and specifically he says, "Can you give me a shout out on one of your videos?" Here's your shout out, Manuel. Thanks for the water bottle. I hope to get on the bike relatively soon. Maybe next winter I'll start doing some more cycling. And another very kind gentleman sent me a nice forestry helmet, so when I'm doing my tree trimmings and stuff in the future, I can wear a nice helmet. And he also sent me some chainsaw chaps here. I think a few of you mentioned that I should be wearing chaps while I'm using the chainsaw. I wasn't aware that I have to wear these at all times while I'm using the chainsaw, but I will from now on, because I got the chaps. Awesome, guys. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave your comments and your questions down below. And if you want any help with any rainwater harvesting projects that you have, definitely check out the Facebook group that I started up, DIY Homestead Projects. I'll leave it in the comment box and in the description box below. And I'll catch you guys on the next video. Talk to you soon.